Good morning slash afternoon slash evening, everyone. Life is a conversation, but not every moment calls for words. There are times when silence is the greatest gift we can give to ourselves and to others. And while we often think of silence as a void, it's actually a space filled with clarity, understanding, and peace. Today, I want to share with you 9 moments when silence is not just valuable, it's essential. One of the most powerful tools we have in managing our emotions is silence. We've all been in situations where emotions take over. Maybe it's frustration, anger, or even sadness. And in those moments, our impulse is often to react, to speak, or to defend ourselves. But the act of remaining silent in these moments isn't a sign of weakness or submission. Rather, it is an indication of strength, discipline, and emotional maturity. When anger rises within us, the initial surge can be overwhelming. It clouds our judgment, distorts our perceptions, and leads us to react impulsively, often in ways that don't align with our values or our better selves. In these times, silence is not just a retreat from the situation, it's a conscious choice to pause and regain control of our emotional state. Instead of immediately responding to the provocation, silence gives us the space to step back, to breathe, and to reflect on what's really happening in that moment. By choosing silence, we allow ourselves time to process the intensity of our emotions. It's in this pause that we recognize the impulse to react and realize that reacting in anger, for example, might only escalate the situation and create more harm. Instead of adding fuel to the fire, silence cools the tension both within us and around us. In moments of anger, silence can be a form of self-preservation. It helps us avoid the regret of saying something we might later wish we hadn't. More importantly, silence offers us an opportunity for self-awareness. It creates a space where we can observe our emotions without judgment. We can notice the physical sensations of anger, the tightening of our chest, the racing of our heart, the clenching of our fists, and recognize them for what they are: natural human responses. This recognition can transform our emotional experience. Instead of reacting mindlessly, we become aware of our emotional triggers, which gives us the power to choose a more thoughtful response. Silence also fosters emotional resilience. The more we practice using silence as a tool in emotionally charged situations, the stronger we become at managing our reactions. Over time, this practice helps us develop the emotional discipline to stay composed, even when faced with situations that would typically provoke an outburst. We become more capable of navigating conflict with grace and poise, knowing that we can remain calm and collected in the face of emotional turbulence. In relationships, using silence as a tool for emotional control can be incredibly valuable. When we feel ourselves becoming angry or defensive in an argument, remaining silent allows us to regain composure before we speak. It helps us avoid saying something hurtful in the heat of the moment and allows us to approach the conversation with a clearer, more measured perspective. Silence also gives the other person the space to express themselves, which can lead to a more productive, empathetic exchange. Ultimately, silence in moments of heightened emotion isn't about suppressing or denying our feelings. It's about honoring our emotions enough to respond with intention rather than reacting impulsively. It's about choosing to be in control of our emotional state rather than letting our emotions dictate our actions. Silence, in this context, becomes a powerful tool for emotional mastery, helping us to navigate the complexities of our feelings with wisdom, patience, and self-control. In a world that often values quick reactions and immediate responses, the ability to remain silent in the face of strong emotions is an invaluable skill. It empowers us to pause, reflect, and choose our responses with care and intention. In a society that constantly pushes us to share our opinions, express our thoughts, and have a voice on every topic, The value of silence, especially when we don't have enough knowledge, cannot be overstated. In many situations, silence is not a sign of ignorance or weakness, but rather a sign of wisdom and humility. It reflects a deep awareness that we do not have all the answers, and that it is okay to acknowledge that. When we are faced with a subject or issue that we do not fully understand, our natural instinct may be to speak anyway, to offer our take, or to throw in our 2 cents to appear informed or engaged. But the truth is, voicing opinions on topics where our knowledge is limited or incomplete can lead to misinformation, misunderstandings, and even embarrassment. Instead of contributing to the conversation in a meaningful way, we may unintentionally mislead others or undermine our own credibility. Choosing silence in these moments is an act of maturity and intellectual honesty. It reflects the understanding that true wisdom lies in knowing the limits of our knowledge and in recognizing when we need more information. Instead of speaking just to be heard, silence allows us to reflect, learn, and understand. This humility creates an opportunity for growth, both for us and for those around us. It shows that we value accuracy over vanity, depth over surface level engagement. In a world that celebrates being outspoken, silence in the face of inadequate knowledge is a form of strength. It allows us to step back and take a moment to consider the complexities of the topic at hand. Rather than offering an incomplete or superficial opinion, we embrace the idea that sometimes it is far more powerful to listen, to ask questions, and to seek understanding. This not only enriches our own perspective, but also contributes to a more informed, thoughtful, and productive conversation. Moreover, silence in these moments demonstrates our ability to exercise critical thinking. By withholding a response until we've gathered sufficient knowledge, we allow ourselves to process information more thoroughly. We give ourselves the opportunity to question, to explore, and to consider various viewpoints. Instead of offering a knee-jerk reaction based on limited information, we develop the discipline to ensure that our contributions are well-founded, thoughtful, and constructive. It's also important to note that silence can foster an environment of open dialogue and collaboration. When we remain silent in the face of inadequate knowledge, we make space for others to contribute their expertise or insights. By acknowledging our own limitations, we signal to others that it's okay to not have all the answers and that we value their perspective. This encourages a culture of mutual respect, where everyone's voice is heard, but no one feels pressured to speak beyond their level of understanding. On the flip side, when we speak out of turn, when we voice an opinion on something we don't fully comprehend, it often leads to superficial conversations or worse, the spread of misinformation. We may sound confident in our assertions, but without the necessary knowledge to back them up, our credibility can quickly diminish. Others may lose respect for our ability to discern, and over time, this undermines our influence in discussions. Silence in these situations also has the power to build trust. When we admit that we don't have all the answers, others are more likely to trust us when we do speak. It shows that we are honest and self-aware, not afraid to acknowledge when we don't know something, and open to learning from others. This honesty fosters trust and respect, which are crucial for building meaningful relationships, whether in personal interactions or in professional settings. Furthermore, silence can often provide the clarity we need to become more informed. By resisting the temptation to speak prematurely, we are more likely to ask questions and seek out the information we need. This thirst for knowledge, coupled with our ability to remain silent, encourages a mindset of continuous learning, a mindset that is essential for growth in any area of life. In the fast-paced, often reactionary world we live in, judgment is a natural, sometimes unconscious part of human behavior. We judge people, situations, and circumstances almost instinctively, frequently based on our own experiences, perceptions, and biases. However, judgment, especially when it is made hastily and without a full understanding, can be harmful both to others and to ourselves. The act of remaining silent, particularly in moments when we are tempted to pass judgment, can be one of the most powerful practices for fostering compassion, empathy, and connection in our lives. We live in a world that often encourages judgment. In a social media-driven society, it's easy to fall into the trap of making snap judgments about others based on what we see, hear, or read. People's actions, appearances, or even brief interactions can lead us to form opinions about them, opinions that may not fully represent the reality of their lives. This kind of judgment is often based on surface-level information, assumptions, or preconceived notions. In these situations, silence can be a profound tool for restraint, for it creates a space where we can stop, pause, and reconsider the accuracy of our initial thoughts. When we are silent, especially in the face of judgmental thoughts, we create the opportunity to reflect on the situation more deeply. This reflection encourages us to ask ourselves critical questions. What do I really know about this person or situation? Am I making assumptions based on incomplete or biased information? How might my judgment be colored by my own experiences and perspectives? By simply taking a moment of silence to reflect, we can often see that our initial judgments were far from accurate or fair. This pause allows us to check ourselves before acting on those judgments, thereby preventing harm or misunderstanding. Furthermore, silence in the face of judgment helps us recognize that we are not in a position to fully understand someone else's life or experiences. Every individual carries with them a unique set of circumstances, history, and emotions that shape their actions and decisions. When we judge someone, we often forget this fundamental truth. Silence helps us step back from this tendency, reminding us that we do not have access to the full story of another's life. We can never truly know what someone else has been through, what they are struggling with, or what is motivating their behavior. In that silence, we allow space for the possibility that there is much more to the story than meets the eye, and that it is not our place to rush to conclusions. When we hold back from judgment, we create an environment of openness and acceptance. Rather than labeling others or condemning them based on our personal standards or experiences, we acknowledge their humanity, their complexity, and their worth. Silence allows us to suspend our immediate reactions and open our hearts and minds to understanding. It enables us to replace judgment with curiosity. Curiosity about the person's background, their struggles, their desires, and their motivations. In this way, silence becomes a bridge that connects us to others, fostering empathy rather than division. The act of being silent rather than judgmental also brings about personal growth. It's easy to fall into the trap of judging others, as it can provide us with a false sense of superiority or control. When we judge, we momentarily elevate ourselves by comparing ourselves to others, often in a way that overlooks our own imperfections. Silence, however, gives us the space to confront our own biases and limitations. It forces us to question why we feel the need to judge and helps us recognize that judgment often stems from insecurity, fear, or a lack of understanding. In the absence of judgment, we create a space for personal humility. Instead of focusing on what's wrong with others, silence directs our attention inward, allowing us to examine our own thoughts, actions, and motivations. We begin to recognize that judgment of others is often a reflection of our own unresolved issues or unmet needs. Through this understanding, silence can become an invitation to work on ourselves, to cultivate self-awareness, and to become more compassionate and accepting of both ourselves and others. Moreover, Silence helps prevent the harmful effects of gossip and unnecessary criticism. How often have we been caught in conversations where others are speaking ill of someone else, passing judgment, or making disparaging comments without knowing the full picture? It can be tempting to join in, to agree, or to offer our own opinions, but silence in these situations allows us to resist the urge to contribute to negativity. It helps us avoid participating in the spread of unverified information, and it protects us from the toxic cycle of gossip that can damage relationships and reputations. In the absence of judgmental words, we create a space for kindness and understanding to flourish. In relationships, practicing silence as a means of preventing judgment is particularly powerful. How many times have we judged our loved ones, whether consciously or unconsciously, for their actions, choices, or behaviors? These judgments can erode trust, breed resentment, and create distance in our relationships. By choosing silence in moments of frustration or disappointment, we prevent rash judgments that may hurt or alienate the people we care about. Instead of reacting in judgment, silence allows us to listen more attentively, to consider the other person's perspective, and to respond with empathy and understanding. This leads to deeper, more meaningful connections built on trust and mutual respect. In a broader context, silence prevents judgment by fostering a more inclusive and compassionate society. When we choose to remain silent rather than make hasty judgments, we create an environment where people feel safer, more accepted, and more valued. We break down the barriers that division and judgment build, and we replace them with the foundational pillars of understanding, tolerance, and kindness. Silence in the face of judgment creates space for dialogue, connection, and the recognition that despite our differences, we all share a common humanity. In conclusion, silence in the face of judgment is a powerful act of restraint, empathy, and self-awareness. It prevents us from acting on incomplete or biased perceptions, allowing us to foster a deeper understanding of others and ourselves. By practicing silence, we create a space for compassion to grow, for relationships to strengthen, and for a more respectful, harmonious world to emerge. Silence, rather than judgment, enables us to see people for who they truly are: flawed, beautiful, and deserving of empathy. In a world that is often noisy, filled with distractions, and driven by the urgency of getting our own voices heard, the simple act of listening can sometimes be overlooked or underestimated. Yet in its deepest form, listening is one of the most profound ways we can show respect for others. It is an intentional act that goes beyond just hearing words. It involves being fully present, offering our undivided attention, and creating space for someone to express themselves without judgment or interruption. Listening in this way becomes a powerful gesture that acknowledges the worth of the other person and validates their thoughts, feelings, and experiences. When we truly listen, we communicate that the other person's voice matters. In our busy, fast-paced world, people are often looking for a space where they can be heard and understood. In many conversations, especially in our personal lives or professional settings, we can be so eager to express our own opinions that we fail to give others the opportunity to speak fully. However, when we make the conscious decision to listen, not just to respond, but to understand, we convey a message that says, "You are important and I am here to hear you." This simple act can be incredibly powerful, creating an environment of mutual respect, trust, and empathy. True listening involves more than just passively hearing the words being spoken. It requires us to tune into the speaker's emotions, body language, tone, and the nuances behind their words. Often what people say is just a small part of the story. The unspoken emotions, the feelings of vulnerability, the subtle hints of fear or joy. These are just as important as the words themselves. By actively engaging with both the verbal and nonverbal cues, We show that we are not only listening, but also deeply attuned to the full experience of the person speaking. When we listen with empathy, we enter into another person's world, seeing things from their perspective. It requires us to put aside our own judgments, assumptions, and biases, and to focus on the other person's experiences, needs, and feelings. This is especially critical in situations where emotions are heightened, such as in moments of conflict, grief, or stress. Listening with empathy demonstrates that we are not just trying to fix or offer solutions, but that we are present with the person in their emotional reality. In these moments, the act of listening becomes a form of emotional support, a way of saying, I see you, I hear you, and I am here for you. Listening as an act of respect also means resisting the urge to interrupt or complete someone else's thoughts. In many conversations, we may find ourselves eager to jump in with our own ideas or solutions, but this often prevents the speaker from fully expressing themselves. Interruptions can be perceived as dismissive or patronizing, even if they are not intended that way. By allowing the other person to finish their thoughts before responding, we show patience and respect for their process. We create space for them to fully articulate their message, which can lead to a richer, more meaningful exchange of ideas. Moreover, listening as an act of respect also involves giving our full attention to the speaker. In today's digital age, distractions are everywhere. Smartphones, emails, social media, and the constant pull of multitasking. It can be tempting to check our phones or let our minds wander when someone is speaking, especially if the conversation is lengthy or difficult. However, when we divide our attention, we communicate that the other person's words are not as important as the things that are distracting us. On the other hand, when we make the effort to be fully present in the moment, to turn off distractions and to focus solely on the conversation, we send a message that their words are worthy of our time and attention. This shows respect not only for the speaker, but also for the relationship we share with them. Listening as an act of respect is also a reflection of emotional intelligence. It involves managing our own reactions, especially when we may feel defensive, upset, or disagree with what is being said. In these moments, listening becomes a practice of self-control. Rather than reacting impulsively, we choose to remain open, to understand the speaker's perspective, and to consider their thoughts without judgment. This act of restraint allows us to engage more thoughtfully and to have conversations that are not based on ego or emotional reactivity, but on understanding and mutual respect. By listening with patience and openness, we create the foundation for more constructive dialogue and problem solving, even in challenging situations. In addition to fostering understanding and respect, listening can also build deeper connections between individuals. When we listen attentively, we demonstrate that we value the other person's input and care about their well-being. This builds trust and strengthens relationships. In personal relationships, whether with family members, friends, or romantic partners, listening creates a safe space where individuals feel valued, loved, and supported. In professional relationships, it leads to more effective teamwork, collaboration, and a sense of shared purpose. Listening, therefore, is not just a tool for communication, it is the cornerstone of building meaningful, lasting connections with others. Furthermore, listening fosters a sense of belonging. When people feel heard, they are more likely to share openly and to contribute their ideas, knowing that their thoughts will be valued. In a group or community setting, this encourages inclusivity and diversity of thought. It creates an environment where everyone feels respected and empowered to participate, knowing that their voice matters. In contrast, when people feel that their words are being ignored or dismissed, they may withdraw, become disengaged, or even stop contributing altogether. Listening as an act of respect, therefore, helps to nurture a culture of openness, collaboration, and mutual respect. In any human relationship, conflict is an inevitable and natural occurrence. Whether it's a disagreement with a close friend, a difference of opinion with a colleague, or a misunderstanding within a family, conflict often arises when two or more people hold differing viewpoints, emotions, or expectations. The way we handle conflict plays a significant role in the health and strength of our relationships. While many instinctively rush to defend their positions, to argue, or to convince the other person of their perspective, one of the most powerful tools we can utilize in conflict is silence. Silence is not about avoiding the issue or conceding defeat. It is about using the power of quiet reflection to respond with intention, patience, and clarity. In the heat of conflict, emotions tend to run high. Anger, frustration, sadness, or hurt can cloud our judgment, making it difficult to think clearly or communicate effectively. In these moments, our desire to be heard or to win the argument often drives us to speak impulsively, sometimes saying things we don't mean or that may escalate the situation. This is where silence becomes a vital tool for de-escalation. Rather than reacting emotionally or impulsively, choosing silence gives us the opportunity to pause, regain control of our emotions, and reflect on the best way to move forward. Silence in conflict allows us to separate ourselves from the emotional intensity of the moment. When we feel ourselves becoming upset, we might instinctively want to retaliate or defend ourselves. However, reacting out of heightened emotion can often lead to words or actions we later regret. Silence serves as a buffer, creating the space needed to step back, breathe, and reflect on our emotional responses. This pause enables us to become aware of our feelings and to assess whether our response is coming from a place of logic or emotion. The act of remaining silent helps us to avoid making decisions or statements that might escalate the conflict or create further harm. Moreover, silence in conflict enables us to listen more attentively. Often, in heated discussions, we are so focused on formulating our next response that we stop truly listening to the other person. When we choose silence, we allow the other person the space to fully express themselves. Listening without interrupting or prematurely forming a rebuttal is a powerful act of respect and empathy. It shows that we value the other person's point of view, even if we disagree. Silence opens up the opportunity for the other person to feel heard, which can soften their defensive posture and create an environment where constructive dialogue is more likely to occur. In the midst of a conflict, silence also helps prevent miscommunication. When emotions are high, it's easy for words to be misinterpreted or for misunderstandings to take root. Our emotions can cloud our ability to convey our thoughts clearly, and we may unintentionally say something that is offensive or hurtful. Silence allows us to pause before speaking, giving us time to carefully choose our words and ensure that we are expressing ourselves in a way that is respectful and thoughtful. By staying silent for a moment, we create the chance to speak with greater precision and intentionality, which can help avoid further escalation of the conflict. Additionally, silence in conflict can be an effective tool for self-regulation. When we remain quiet, we are forced to check in with ourselves before reacting. We can assess whether we are acting out of personal ego, insecurity, or a desire to win the argument, rather than seeking a resolution or understanding. This self-awareness helps us avoid the trap of getting stuck in a cycle of defensiveness or pride. By taking a step back and using silence to ground ourselves, we can ensure that we approach the situation from a place of emotional intelligence, maturity, and self-control. In some situations, silence in conflict may serve as a nonverbal expression of disagreement. This is especially true when we choose to remain silent rather than engage in an argument we feel is unproductive or unlikely to lead to a meaningful resolution. In these instances, silence can be a form of peaceful protest, a way of indicating that we are not willing to participate in an unhelpful or unconstructive back and forth. Rather than adding fuel to the fire, silence can demonstrate our desire to disengage from negativity and to take a more thoughtful, respectful approach to resolving the issue. This doesn't mean withdrawing entirely. It means choosing not to engage in ways that are hurtful or unproductive. Silence also allows for space for reflection and problem solving. Sometimes conflicts arise because there is a genuine misunderstanding or a lack of communication. Silence in these moments provides a chance to think through the problem at hand and to consider potential solutions. Without the noise of arguing, both parties may have the opportunity to think more clearly about the issue and about how they want to approach a resolution. Often, the act of pausing can bring clarity to the situation, helping both individuals step back and look at the conflict with a fresh perspective. Silence can foster an environment where both sides are more willing to consider different viewpoints and find common ground. In relationships, silence can also be a way to show respect for the other person's emotions. When someone is upset or in distress, sometimes the best way to support them is not to offer immediate solutions or arguments, but simply to listen. Silence gives the other person the space to process their emotions, to feel validated, and to express themselves without feeling pressured. In such cases, our silence communicates that we are emotionally present, ready to support them without rushing to fix the situation. This type of listening can strengthen relationships and demonstrate care and empathy. Another crucial aspect of silence in conflict is that it can help both parties avoid further harm. Often, when we are involved in an argument, our emotions and words can become weapons. A comment made in anger or frustration can create lasting damage, both emotionally and relationally. Silence, however, helps us to avoid saying things we may regret later. It can give us the time to reflect on whether our words are likely to help or hurt the situation. By staying silent, we can prevent the emotional damage that often results from impulsive, harsh words. In the modern world, where noise, both literal and metaphorical, bombards us from every direction, finding clarity can often feel like an elusive goal. We are constantly surrounded by distractions, the constant hum of technology, the unending stream of information, the expectations of others, and our own internal chatter. In such an environment, it's easy to become overwhelmed and lost in a sea of competing voices and thoughts. Yet, amidst this chaos, one of the most profound tools we have at our disposal for gaining clarity is silence. Silence is more than the absence of sound. It is a space, a moment, a sanctuary that allows us to retreat from the external world and connect with our inner selves. In a world that values constant motion, communication, and multitasking, silence offers a rare opportunity to stop, to pause, and to listen, not only to the world around us, but to the world within. By embracing silence, we create the conditions for clarity to emerge, allowing us to better understand our own thoughts, emotions, desires, and decisions. Silence helps clear mental clutter. One of the primary ways silence leads to clarity is by helping to clear the mental clutter that often clouds our judgment and decision making. In our daily lives, our minds are constantly racing with thoughts about work, relationships, responsibilities, and future plans. These thoughts compete for our attention, leaving us feeling scattered, overwhelmed, and often uncertain about where to focus or what to prioritize. When we choose silence, we step away from this constant stream of mental noise. The act of silencing the external world gives our minds the chance to pause and reset. In this stillness, we can sift through our thoughts, process emotions, and release mental clutter. With fewer distractions, we can bring our attention to what is most important and identify the core issues or concerns that need our attention. As the noise fades away, we begin to see more clearly, both in terms of what we truly want and what our next steps should be. Silence promotes deep reflection. Silence fosters deep reflection, which is an essential aspect of gaining clarity. Reflection is the process of turning inward and examining our thoughts, feelings, and experiences in a meaningful way. In the absence of noise and distraction, we are better able to listen to our own inner voice, the one that speaks more softly but with greater truth than the external pressures around us. In moments of silence, we are able to review past events, decisions, and interactions without the rush to react or respond immediately. This reflective space allows us to evaluate our actions, understand our motivations, and assess whether our choices align with our values. Reflection gives us the opportunity to learn from mistakes, adjust our course, and gain insight into how we might approach similar situations in the future. This deep contemplation, when practiced regularly, builds wisdom and self-awareness, which are critical components of clarity. Moreover, silence creates a mental and emotional distance from the noise of the external world, allowing us to look at situations more objectively. When we are caught up in the heat of a moment or lost in the busyness of life, we can become so involved in the details that we lose sight of the bigger picture. Silence allows us to take a step back, observe the situation from a broader perspective, and identify patterns, connections, and insights that we may have missed in the rush of everyday life. In this way, silence helps us gain a clearer understanding of complex issues and provides us with the space to formulate thoughtful responses. Silence facilitates decision-making. One of the most common sources of stress and confusion in life is the need to make decisions, whether it's about career choices, relationships, or personal goals. In today's fast-paced world, we are often pressured to make decisions quickly, and the fear of making the wrong choice can be paralyzing. When we are faced with a tough decision, silence can be an invaluable ally in the process of gaining clarity. In moments of quiet, we can silence the outside noise of opinions, advice, and expectations and focus on our own internal wisdom. The more we quiet our minds, the more clearly we can hear what our heart or intuition is telling us. Decisions made from this space of calm and clarity are more likely to align with our true desires, values, and long-term goals. Rather than making decisions out of fear, anxiety, or external pressures, silence allows us to choose with greater confidence and authenticity. Sometimes, the act of sitting in silence allows us to realize that the pressure to make a decision immediately is, in itself, a source of confusion. Silence gives us the permission to slow down, to reflect, and to wait for the right moment to make a choice. In these moments of stillness, clarity may not come instantly, but as we allow ourselves to sit with the uncertainty, the answers often emerge naturally. Silence helps us cultivate patience, which is essential for making sound decisions. Silence provides emotional clarity. Another significant way silence brings clarity is by allowing us to process and understand our emotions. Emotions are powerful forces that can easily cloud our judgment and create confusion. When we are caught up in strong emotional states, whether it's anger, sadness, anxiety, or excitement, it can be difficult to think clearly or see a situation for what it truly is. Silence provides the necessary space for emotional processing. By stepping away from external stimuli and engaging in quiet reflection, we give ourselves the time to fully experience and understand our emotions. In this stillness, we can ask ourselves deeper questions. Why am I feeling this way? What triggered these emotions? What do these feelings tell me about what I truly need or want? Through this emotional clarity, we are better able to manage our feelings, respond to them thoughtfully, and make decisions that are in alignment with our emotional truth. Silence helps us gain a deeper understanding of ourselves, our emotional needs, and our inner desires. It gives us the opportunity to release emotions that may be weighing us down and to step forward with a clearer sense of emotional balance. Silence allows for creativity and problem solving. Clarity doesn't only apply to decisions and emotions, it also enhances creativity and problem solving. Often we become so focused on solving a problem that we don't leave room for creative solutions to emerge. In the hustle of trying to fix an issue quickly, we may overlook alternative perspectives